Everybody, I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you to the event of the year. It is a salute. A single finger salute, but a salute nevertheless to our dear friend Richard Goldberg. So, before we begin, this is a real-time roast. This is the deal. So, Richard, would you please take the seat of honor? You all know I'm a big Marvel fan, so roasters assemble. So, Avengers assemble. Anyway, all my roasters, I'd like you to come to the front table. Steve Boswell. Jonathan Goldberg. Joe Ross. Rich McCullough. And Doug Strike. I want to begin by just, again, welcoming everybody. Don't all sit on one side. That's my seat. The one with the scotch in front of it is my seat. All right. I want to just remind you, some of you were with us a couple weeks ago, so bear with me, but we were in Atlantic City a couple weeks ago at the League of Municipalities Convention, and I have a dinner on Tuesdays. And I reminded everybody with a toast that night that Richard and I, 23 years ago, were in Atlantic City, and we were talking about what we're doing, and Richard was decrying the fact that he took long, slow Cadillac rides, driven by a former mayor, very slowly, to go have dinner with people he didn't want to see, had no interest in meeting, and it was cutting into his TV time. 23 years ago, it was probably Starsky and Hutch, but he was very, very upset about this thing. I said, Richard, let's go to Angelo's. Angelo's Fairmont Tavern. It's a red sauce Italian. You'll love it. And then I said the magic words. I'll buy it. Worked. So with that, he invited 6 more people. 8 of us then descended upon Angelo's, and we had the first of our meals together, breaking bread as the Hawthorne family. And if you know anything about Richard, if you do something once, it's a tradition. Twice, it's a ritual. And for 23 years, we gathered on the Tuesday of the League of Municipalities in Atlantic City at Angelo's, and for 23 years, I paid. However, there was a year, and I have to be a little serious for a moment here, but just for a moment. There was a year, my father was in the hospital, he was dying. I said, Richard, I can't go this year, I have to be around. He said, I'll host. I said, okay. Not only did he host, but he paid the dinner. $1,500, $1,550 with tip. And you know, I was so grateful. I will always remember and treasure that. The staff at Angelo's will always remember and less than treasure that, let's say. But I raised a glass to toast you that night as our friendship of 23 years of eating at Angelo's on a Tuesday. And our crowd grew to 29 people this year who joined us, and it was wonderful as we gathered like a real Italian family. And you. So, you know, with that, I will always remember that I thought that was then and this is now. And you're not going to get the same kind of treatment tonight. They're not a toast tonight, it's a roast tonight. In fact, there's so many people who wanted to roast you, I had to turn them away. Some people took roast literally. And I'm like, not that kind of roast. But you know, in fairness, every one of us in this room can think of a moment of kindness that you've only one. But each of us, if we think really hard, can think of that one moment where he did something really nice. And all of us can think of many moments where he made completely inappropriate comments, where he said things that were rude, insulting, degrading, where he has no sense whatsoever of something called timing, as you know. So it's never too soon for one of your jokes. You know, so I wanted, before we begin, to do some thank yous, and I want to thank the planning committee. The planning committee, of course, is Sharon Goldberg. And of course, when we need some things done, we always call on our friend Dominic Mealy. And the real heart and soul of the planning committee, the person who really put this all together tonight, is Ellen Brocknell. I also would be remiss if we didn't mention our dear friend Elias, who was so gracious tonight. We said, Elias, we only have like $60 a head to spend, and he said, don't worry about it. So we didn't, and we got treated like, you know, as we always do, like family here. So thank you. I do want to thank the Shadow Planning Committee. You know, before this dinner was even conceived, a year before this, there was a small committee of 2 people who came together and said, we really need to start thinking about and planning for Richard's retirement. And I want to thank John Lane and Joe Wittek for coming together and really spearheading the movement to throw this dinner. So they said to me, all right, I have to do this because some of the speakers want me to. Rabbi Wall, I'm good with this, right? They're like, how the fuck do we get rid of this guy? Rabbi, right? We're okay? No priests here, no nuns, we're cool. So, and I also had to break that barrier for some of our later speakers who I'm told may, you know, get into a language issue. So, you know, I said, it's really easy, guys. Throw a dinner. Have a buffet. Tell him he's the guest of honor, and he'll show up, and sure enough, you did take the bait. Joe, thank you. You ran a valiant campaign. It'd be cheap for me to say you came up a little short, but you did. No. I mean, you know, you missed it by this much. And I will be visiting you in the doghouse that's being built for you and the annex to the council room. You know, and as for John, I look forward to working with you. John's campaign was mostly walking around saying, at least I'm not Dominic. You know, we also had some foreign dignitaries. I'm not going to introduce all the people from Northern because you all think you're important. God love you. Randy George was here just not too long ago. He had to leave. Randy, as you know, had a health issue a couple of weeks ago. You know, half of his council was so scared that he was not going to make it, and the other half was so disappointed. Well, Randy's our friend. He joined us briefly, had to leave. We also have some dignitaries from Whitecroft. I see we have a couple of good friends, Tom Madigan and Rudy Boonstra here. Thank you for slumming in here in Hawthorne. And one of our roasters could not make it tonight. Shirley Shortway was all prepared to get even with him for all the shit he did in Jefferson School. The 2 of them were classmates 78 years ago. And at that time, you know, he was the little boy with the bow tie on the playground, and she missed her opportunity tonight. The good news is she sent her much younger brother, Harry Bim Shortway. So we got mayors here tonight, Richard. So you do great. With all that said, I want to start the festivities with a gift. Excuse me. Now, you all know Richard is a big, slow, lumbering person, right? He claims he's like, I got 7,000 steps in today. You know? He puts his phone on the elevator. Down. At the end of the day, he's got steps. He's not moved more than 6 inches. Okay? I mean, really. So if catheter wasn't uncomfortable, you'd have that too. So Richard, of course, moving like he does, somehow, some way, has buffet ninja skills. He moves stealthily. He moves with a speed and with a quietude, and somehow or another he gets to the front of the buffet line always. Your friends at Macaluso's, Richard, contacted the man who makes the stars for the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and they have agreed to tear up a section of their floor at the buffet and install this, the Richard Goldberg Richard S. Goldberg buffet line starters. We left room for memorial. Here it is. Here it is. The engraver said, no extra charge. Anyway, Richard, this will be proudly put into the floor. People will be stepping on your name, wiping things off their feet, but whatever it is, you will always be remembered. So, Richard, congrats. All right, so now is the first of our speakers. First speaker tonight comes to us. He is, I think you're like, what, where is he? President and CEO of Christian Healthcare. We in Hawthorne like to call it the Browning and Forshey farm system. So I would like to call up Doug Strike from Christian Healthcare with a special presentation.
Michael, I hope you're the next president to come live at Christian Health. So, thank you. It's an honor to be here. And before I go any further, I have to admit that I don't have a deep history as a roaster. So don't set your expectations high. I'm told that there are no boundaries. Michael told me that there are no boundaries tonight. And some of the comments here might get a little vicious, and to be truthful, that's really the reason I came here tonight. You see, as the CEO of Christian Health, I have to stay in a very tight, safe area. Unlike you, I've still got my day job, and I don't want to lose it. So, but when I had a legitimate opportunity to do something a bit risque, it was very tempting. But I'm not as old as the mayor yet and ready to be put out to pasture like he is. So I've got to be careful. So I'm going to be a bit tamer than the others who will follow me, and hopefully you gentlemen will all live up to my secret expectations. So, and I can't say, Richard, I'm going to have to still call you mayor. I've called you mayor for many years, so I'm going to maintain that. You served your residents as an elected official with wisdom, courage, and devotion for 24 years, 13 of them as mayor. Not quite Mayor Bay's record, but no one is closer to you than their record, right? And I can remember Mayor Bay driving around town in his big car, big hat on his head, still a very large presence. And I can actually see you doing that as well. I think you could recreate that image. And as much as I thought about and worked with you during the past 13 years, Mayor, I've also thought a lot about Mayor Bay. Actually, I've thought a lot about his wife, Emmeline. That's because of the street of neighbors adjoining the Vista who live on Emmeline Drive. I've actually become very good friends with many of them over the last 19 years of planning the Vista, and you were always a very fair arbiter of issues that came up. You really were. You always put the interests of your residents first. And that's another reason why I jumped at the chance to come and roast you here tonight. Now, I've got to know you well. We've worked on a lot of projects over the years. I learned a long time ago that when my assistant said that you were on the phone, that I needed to look at the balance in the Christian Health checking account before I picked up the phone. Supporting Hawthorne Day, the band shell, community groups in town, all very worthy causes. I'm glad you're leaving office action there because we're just about broke. But even though I thought I knew you well, I decided to do some research and see if there was something noteworthy about you that I didn't know. And it didn't take me long to stumble on something. How many of you know that the mayor used to support a very dashing, stylish ponytail? That's right. I saw a picture of it and I was really impressed. It opened up a whole new perception for me about the mayor. I also started to wonder if he might try and grow it back after leaving office. You know, literally letting your hair down. And I got scared tonight when I arrived to think the mayor was actually starting that process already, but actually going for pigtails this time instead of ponytail. But fortunately, I was just confused, and it was actually the hair growing out of your ears. So maybe the ponytail will still come out. So Mayor, I wanted to leave you with a memento of something that symbolized really well the work that we did together to serve the community. I'm in the community service business too, I'm just not a dirty, filthy politician. So I thought about what would really represent our work together well and be something that really pointed especially toward you, and the choice became obvious. So every time I come up Goffle Hill Road toward my little promised land at the edge of Hawthorne, what do I see first but a new traffic signal that was just installed this year? Right, Chairman Halleck, right? 2021 was finally the year when the traffic signal came to that intersection. All sorts of beaming, smiling Hawthorne residents are turning left from Cedar Hill Avenue onto Goffle Hill Road, thankful that the wait was no longer than the length of a standard red light, instead of the hours and hours and hours that they would often wait for a break in the traffic left from those who are turning left from Sycamore Avenue onto Cedar Hill Avenue, and finally allowed to turn to Hawthorne. But not only are they beaming, I can see all of them mouthing a phrase, "I love Mayor Goldberg." I love Mayor Goldberg. So even though I went through a third round and months of more Board of Adjustment hearings, legal bills, traffic consultants, paid a lot of money thanks to Bergen County's requirements, Mayor Richard S. Goldberg was their hero. Again, I'm in the community service business, so it didn't matter to me that who got the credit. I received all my satisfaction just seeing those smiling faces turning into Hawthorne and praising its mayor for his fine work. So I called the county of Bergen and asked, could we dedicate the traffic signal as the Mayor Richard S. Goldberg traffic signal? Who is Mayor Goldberg? Which Bergen County community is he from? Oh, well, I'm sorry, actually, he's the mayor of Hawthorne, say county. Click. So I called Steve Boswell to see if he could pull some strings, and Steve said, sorry, he's from the wrong county. With just a few months left in office, he's about to be a nobody. It's not going to happen. So I came up with an alternate plan, Mayor, which requires a little bit of assembly, so excuse me for just one moment. This is the Richard S. And since you're retiring, it's actually more practical. Now, I put batteries in there, it was working. I'm really disappointed it's not, so I'll have to figure that out. That's a Bergen County traffic light for you. So since you're retiring, this is actually more practical. You can bring it home with you. So, when Victor Taraglia comes over for a play date, you can put it out in the driveway. You can also put it by your bathroom door. And when you get up in the middle of the night, you get up in the middle of the night, admit it, right? I do. You do. You can wait at the doorway until it turns green to let you know that you can go. Now, Sharon, I also want to suggest that you put this inside the house by the door that leads out to the driveway. Mayor, if the light is red, that means you haven't finished your chores. Sharon will be there to remind you of what's not done. If the light is green, that means that Sharon's had enough of you. And you're encouraged to go.
It'll be a blinking green light, don't worry.
But I want to warn you about if the light is yellow. Let's be honest, what's going to happen? You're going to be home for a couple weeks in January, February. You're going to miss the excitement of being mayor. You're going to start to get a little ornery, a little crotchety. And Sharon's going to get sick of that really, really quick. And she's going to warn you to cut it out or else. So.
More props, I love it.
So here's the plaque to go along with your traffic signal, Mayor. It reads, the Mayor Richard S. Goldberg traffic signal, telling people when to go since 2021.
Thank you, Doug. That was great. Richard, Doug did say, too, that numerically, by age, you do qualify for an assisted living unit, by health record, acute care. Our next speaker comes to us as a long-serving friend and colleague. It's not you. And co-worker. He served as the mayor's personal chauffeur for several years, driving him to and fro, wakes, funerals, bagel shops, pizzerias, and anywhere else. And sometimes when he said, "Can we put the siren on?" Richard McCullough retired as our chief of police a few years back. Nobody really noticed. And he now has a job where he does even less work at Montclair State University. I'm not sure what he's doing there, but he's keeping the kids safe. Don't know. But he is doing a marvelous job because so far, not a whole lot of mass murders and stuff at Montclair State. So kudos to you, Richard. At this point, I'd like to call up the mayor's chauffeur, Richard McCullough.
I don't know whether to roast Michael or roast the mayor.
Both would be good.
Oh, I'm fair game.
Hi, good evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. And happy birthday, Sharon. He took her out tonight to free dinner because he's the mayor. He didn't want to take her out on his own. Michael said to keep it short. Doug, you did very well. You probably beat me. Over the last 38 years, I've been involved in this borough. And I grew up with 6 mayors that I've served under in one capacity or another. Louis Bay, which was mentioned before, and then this guy, which somebody decided to put on the table today. It is Louis Bay Jr. Okay. But over the last 10 years, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be a little honest and a little sincere. As a police chief of the OEM coordinator in this town, the mayor and I have seen the best and the worst that has happened to people and families in our community. We did grow a bond together. And over those years, when the phone rang, Sharon always answered because he was out cold. You need the mayor? Yeah, I need the mayor. Where's the mayor? He's in the bathroom. One time I showed up at the house during a microburst. I think Joe Carr was around back then. He shows up in a major storm. His fire alarm goes off. I didn't know. He shows up in a dress shirt and his underwear. He goes, "Oh, I'm on the computer." Kitty porn just went up that day very, very quickly. Just kidding. But it was a true story. He did show up in his underwear, and I was like, that's a sight I never wanted to share until tonight. But the mayor has always turned around and put Horthorne first. No matter where he's been, where he's at. He never went to a function where I'm talking about this great town. And he had his heart of Horthorne on his, the heart, it was always a passion of Horthorne. And everywhere he went, his meal was on his shirt. I did do this on purpose. I did spill a little bit just to be like you for a change. But anywhere that Richard goes, Michael said, he's got to be first in line. And I go, what's this, the director of public safety? You got to check all the food before everybody else eats it? But you can walk in his office any day of the week. Say hello to him and say, oh, you had a tiger today. As president of the Lions Club, he bragged about his running the fastest meeting in club history. And it wasn't due to lack of activity. It was he just wanted to get to the next course of meal faster than anybody else. But I knew that I knew when the mayor decided that he was going to sit back and retire from office, somebody was going to do something to dedicate something in his honor. And when they came up with the Boys and Girls Club in a gymnasium, has anybody seen Rich play ball? I mean, so they go, let's go up to the community center and check. And I was just sitting there like, yeah. But I was very shocked, and it's a great community center, but I don't think you've ever played ball there. The last article in Tapper to Hawthorne had another great quote. I think it was from John Bertolo. He said, the mayor quickly proved that he was a good dancer and very light on his feet. You ever dance with him? Light on his feet. I could probably tell you 10 stories. One is a classic. We're up in Wyckoff at a house of worship security briefing on how to protect our churches. And I introduced him to John Page from Homeland Security. And all of a sudden, we introduced him to this one. I think Rudy, you might have been there that day, I'm not sure. And all of a sudden, John Page looks at me and goes, the mayor's down. I go, he does it all the time. He just turns around and he falls down. It was like that blow-up doll that was round at the bottom. You just push it over and he'd go this way, that way. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen the mayor trip and fall. But it's always like watching the great fight of '73, down goes Frazier. One minute he was there, and the next minute he wasn't. So, I did keep it short, Michael. So, just in closing, speaking about the years of this town and all the mayors that I've served with, I wouldn't have traded any of these years but to work with this guy. He was number one. So, thank you.
That's about enough saying nice things there.
You promote me.
Are you ready? Our next speaker claims to be a longtime friend of the mayor's. They come from very different backgrounds. One of them is very urbane, pampered existence with a maid, housekeeper, chauffeur, butler. The other from Riverside, Patterson. Joe Ross has never been able to tell a story in under an hour. Joe Ross's wife has a permanent eye roll. And that's true. I mean, I never saw a person roll her eyes as often as someone, and that with Joe, but it's well deserved. So I would love to call up our next speaker, right from the brother of a former mayor of the borough of Hawthorne, and our dear friend, Joe Ross.
Actually, Joe, I'm going to talk to Mike about being short. I have to adjust the microphone a little bit. I'll try and be brief, which I will. First off, very nice crowd. Most of you are here to thank Rich for his long service to the borough, I'm sure. Some, like his wife Sharon and Mayor-elect John Lane, are just here to make sure he leaves like he said he would. Rich and I go back. Well, Rich, actually, as my granddaughters call you, Uncle Richie. That's right. Yes, go back almost 40 years. I had no gray hair, and I didn't need the glasses. And yes, he sported a nifty ponytail. We met at the Hawthorne Cubs when our sons were starting their football careers. Unfortunately, after a valiant effort, Jonathan realized that football wasn't for him. Rich took it well. He told me, my people normally don't play sports. we usually own the team. And that's a true story. But Rich stuck around, and eventually we ran for office at the Cubs, and I became president, and he was my vice president for about 10 years. We were truly the odd couple. Yes, I grew up in Patterson, an Italian kid in an Italian neighborhood. He grew up a Jewish kid in Hawthorne, definitely not a Jewish neighborhood. In Patterson, we thought Hawthorne was the country. After all, the houses had lawns. Never saw that. Yet somehow this odd couple stuck together. There was a time, yes, Rich McAuliffe, where I convinced Rich to get in shape. And we know that pear and round are shapes, but we were looking for something better. So on Saturday mornings, we would go to the gym. We would start with the stationary bike. Me at level 12, him at level 2. Then we would do the weight machine circuit. And after that, the steam. Thankfully, he did wear a towel. We would shower and head home, or so I thought. Rich insisted on a stop at the kosher nosh deli. He would order a sandwich and a half with extra pickles. I couldn't convince him that this defeated our exercise program, but he insisted. This lasted a few weeks until he tried to play racquetball and threw his back out. He was right, his people don't play sports. I think he's actually still looking to buy a racquetball team. I'm not sure we can find one. I'll end, and I said I would be brief, with what I call the 3 days of the phone call. The first day, the phone rang. Yes, that's all phones did back then. It was Rich. He said Mayor Fred Crisatelli asked him to run for council. I could hear the pride and excitement in his voice. He asked my opinion, and I told him to talk it over with Sharon, and if she agreed, he should go for it. The next day came call number 2. He decided he was going to run. I told him I would offer any help he needed. God knows, a Jew with a ponytail running in Hawthorne needed all that help. The next day, phone call number 3, I didn't even get to say hello. All I heard was, "You son of a bitch, Fred asked you first, and you said no." So that's how his illustrious career began. But through it all, the odd couple still exists, and I love him like a brother.
This Shirley couldn't make it, so this was really going to be the halftime of the program, and at halftime I thought we needed entertainment. I was very much inspired by the speakers so far. And Richard, I'm going to do something I never do in front of the crowd. I'm going to sing. You know, Richard, there's a great musical, Fiddler on the Roof, and the character Tevye, who you know led the people out of the little town of Anatetica. And if he was here, he would say, "So let me see if I get this straight. There's 4 Jews in Hawthorne, and one of them's the mayor." Yeah. And he would allow me, I think, to present the song. Please remember the music. If I were Rich Goldberg, all day long playing spider solitaire, wearing out the mayor's chair, I'd never have to work hard. Watch some reruns of the Brady Bunch, and yell upstairs to Sharon, "Where's my lunch?" Ellen, Michelle, this is for you. Whenever Hawthorne Day would meet, Joe Ross in the next seat, like the old guys from the Muppet Show. With every new idea, we would look and then we'd sneer and tell them definitely no. If I were Rich Goldberg, I'd go on cruises, ocean, sea, and bay, as long as there's a grand buffet. When Sharon isn't looking, I graze all day like cattle eating grass, and walk around the building past temperature, a new reality begins to set in. I buy a scepter and crown and walk around the town and hope that someone please will make a fuss. And it would be oh so rude if I do not get free food when I am Mayor Emeritus. If I were Rich Goldberg, I'd start my work day shortly after noon. Use 2 fingers like an extra spoon. Tell bad jokes, then say, is it too soon? If I were Rich Goldberg. Jonathan, can I get a cantor?
Encore.
Thank you. I want to be a cantor in your temple. At this point, there is no human being who's wanted to be here more than the next speaker. All his life he's been planning this day of revenge. From childhood to now, no person has more grievances, I am sure, against his father than Jonathan Goldberg. Jonathan is an accomplished playwright. He is a poet. He is a published author. He is a graduate of the Tisch School at NYU. He works here every other weekend as a busboy. And he is here tonight to roast his father. Jonathan Goldberg.
I wasn't sure I wanted to do this. I was thinking about saving these thoughts for my father's eulogy, but what's the harm in waiting a few weeks? The reason I decided to do it was to let everyone know that I am who I am today because of him. That's not praise, it's an indictment. I am this way because of him. It's easy to go after my dad for his weight, for his looks, his weird, all of it. That's not fair. It's what's on the inside that matters, not the physical. So let us not forget, he's also petty, retrograde, and egotistical. Yes, egotistical. The proof, this event in honor of my father is on my mother's birthday. Because it would not be my mother's birthday if it wasn't all about my father. My father always wants to be the corpse at every funeral, the bride at every wedding, the contestant at every pie eating contest. Actually, he's not a big pie person. He's just a big person. But let's be honest. My father and I both struggled with our weight. I am this way because of him. But to be fair, the struggle isn't really the weight, it's the belts. The weight's easy. A lot of jokes tonight are about my father's appearance, which is terrible. I take it personally. Why? Because half my genes come from him. I'm doomed. Look at him. Look at me. Look at him. For you it's comedy, for me it's tragedy. I am this way because of him. My father has 2 kids that we know of, but knowing his skills too is probably an overestimation. But one is a playwright and podcaster, the other translates gay Japanese sex comics. I don't know what old gypsy woman he pissed off, but she really did a number on him. But I am this way because of him. There's a reason the 2 places my sister lived were California and Japan. They are geographically the farthest she could get and still get an allowance. Or as we call it, reparations. Now it's true that parents shouldn't pick favorites, but I never realized neither was an option. Just kidding, please don't cut me off. Remember, I am this way because of him. I cry easily. I always have. Like in movies. I cried at the end of E.T., Schindler's List, even Jaws. I just really wanted that shark to find love in a small New England beach town. My father, he didn't like my crying. He wanted me to be manly. Oops. But he tried. He tried to teach me. But as they say, those who can't do, teach. But honestly, how much can a man whose favorite song is It's Raining Men teach you about values? I am this way because of him. But he tried. He tried to take me fishing, it didn't work. Tried to make me play sports, it didn't work. He tried the strip club, he didn't bring me, he went by himself for research. Apparently it worked because he's still going all the time. But I am this way because of him. He was afraid I'd be bullied at school, so he bullied me first. Maybe it was some kind of homeopathic cure, or he just enjoyed it, but why choose? He called me Weenie Boy. That was his grand plan to toughen me up, calling me Weenie Boy. This from a man whose nickname in high school was Lumpy. But look, it worked perfectly. I am so tough. I am so tough. I have a master's degree in dramatic writing. I am so tough I only scream at spiders half the time I see. I am so tough I now take my feelings, bottle them up, and only unleash them in a healthy outburst via binge eating and random angry outbursts. Mission accomplished, it worked, congratulations, thank you. Because when your teacher cuts such a rugged silhouette, look at him, it looks like he was chiseled out of pure jello. In the contest of manliness, we're the participation trophies. I am this way because of him. But here's the secret. He is actually a very sensitive person. He's actually not afraid to let me see him cry. And I've seen it often. Whenever he checks the pizza box and finds it empty. When anyone gets something he wants. Anytime he has to get up off the couch, tears. He once cried for 3 straight hours when he heard the kosher nachos out of pastrami. But you know what he did? Through the tears, he ate corned beef, 3 sandwiches. The man is a hero, but you are what you eat, so. But that's not to say he didn't teach me things. I am this way because of him. His biggest life lessons, pasta is a side dish, quiche is gay for some reason, and always wear a condom. And I hope one day he'll tell me how to take it off. It's been 35 years, it's really changing. I am this way because of him. You probably all know him best as Mayor Goldberg, and he loves being mayor. He spent a whole term trying to enact prima nocta. Look it up later, it's solid. Anyway, he taught me a lot about civics, voting. He was so vocal and engaged in the election to find the new M&M color. Even though all was not an option, he made it an option. As mayor, he always tried to live up to his greatest political idol, Mayor McCheese of McDonaldland. And he's gone to protests. He was outside, holding up a sign all night when they changed the hot dogs at Goffle Grill. And he once went on a hunger strike between breakfast and brunch when his bagel wasn't toasted fast. I am this way because of him. People say all sorts of things about Hawthorne, none of it good, don't worry. But this town has always been kind. We were the only Jewish family when I was growing up, and that led to some odd interactions, but always from a place of love, at least that's what I tell my therapist. The thing you might not know about us Jews is that when we're over a Gentile's house, we're always considering it as a possible place to hide when they come to round us up. Jews are always afraid of being rounded up. There's always talk at shul about what goy has a nice basement or sturdy attic. But Dad, being so emotional, he'd get in an argument, come home, and be, the Ross's basement is out! And I would say, but the paneling, it's so nice. Like, no! But then they make amends, and we're back on board with hiding under their floorboards, so. But I want you to know that Hawthornites, Hawthornians, Hawnies, Hawfolk, whatever, you are all so loving that we would hide in any of your crawl spaces. Truly. And if the situation were reversed, I'd turn you all in for the reward money. I mean, that's what the mayor would do. And I'm this way because of him. I'm just kidding. I only turned about half of you, and you know which ones you are. My father does love this town, who missed being mayor, but it's John Lane's problem now. My dad and John Lane, or as I call them, the Weight Watchers before and after photos. Make sure you get the key to a secret candy drawer. But it's not a secret, it's not a drawer, it's a whole room. At the end of the day, my dad loves Hawthorne the way he loves me, sparingly with conditions. And I love him because I am this way because of him. But I could have done a lot worse, and from a deli man, that's a rave. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be up here, and I want to say in truth, I love my father. He's always been there, encouraged me to follow my dreams, and never stopped me from being my own person, no matter how much we might have disagreed. He's kind, generous, and a true role model. I don't know what I'd do without him, and in the notion of Tikkun Olam, he's achieved it 1,000,000 times over. The world is a better place for having him in it. And that's probably the most uncomfortable moment for him, the genuine human emotion. So, thank you all, especially my mother, happy birthday, because without her, he'd be my problem, and no thank you. So, remember, I am this way because of him. So, enjoy your time. Enjoy your time.
Our last speaker of the evening, he has a PhD from Stevens Institute of Technology. Is that true? His dissertation is in whatever subject needs to be. He's an expert on almost everything. No, I'm sorry, everything. And he is always one bad joke away from being the former borough engineer of the Borough of Hawthorne. We're going to see if he tests the limits tonight. So our last speaker of the evening, and one of our all-time favorites, the borough engineer of the great Borough of Hawthorne, Dr. Stephen T. Boswell.
It's always hard to follow Wiener Boy. And Tevye, over here, Tevye and Wiener Boy. They told me Joe Ross would take forever. That was bullshit, Joe. You were good. Over the past 20 years, I've had the opportunity to acknowledge, pay tribute, and roast some of the finest people in New Jersey. Tonight is not one of those nights. I looked up Richard Goldberg biography on Wikipedia. This is not bullshit. This is the truth. It comes back and says, is a convicted sex offender and a former fugitive who was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list on June 14th of 2002. Goldberg is the 474th fugitive to be placed on the list. He was captured in Montreal, Canada, and subsequently convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Do not go to Canada with Rich Goldberg. I'll try to come back here. Rich, of course, is not that Rich Goldberg. He was born in New York City, and Rich moved to Hawthorne when he was 5 years old. I know you still resent him, he's not a native. I know that works in Hawthorne. Rich was very bright when he was in school, and he had some issues when he was in the first grade. So the teacher went up to Rich and said, Richard, what is your problem? He said, listen, I am way too smart to be in the first grade. I know this girl, she's in the 3rd grade, and I'm smarter than she is, I should be in the 3rd grade. Teacher didn't know what to do with it. So finally she met with the principal and said, we got to do something with this kid. So the principal said, all right, here's what we'll do. We'll ask him some questions that a 3rd grader would know. And if he gets those questions right, we'll put him in 3rd grade. If he doesn't get them right, he'll go back to 1st grade and we'll tell him ahead of time, this is the deal. If you get them right, we'll promote you. If you get them wrong, you're going back. And Rich agreed to the deal. He thought it was a great deal. So the principal started the inquisition, if you will. And he said to Rich, what's 3 times 3? Rich said 9. What's 6 times 6? 36. Rich blew through all the questions. Principal turned to the teacher and said, I think he's ready for 3rd grade. She said, not so fast. I have a few questions myself because I think you gave him some pretty easy questions. So he said to the teacher, go ahead, ask him whatever you want. And he said, first of all, what do I have in my pants, or what do you have in your pants that I don't have in my pants? And Rich thought for a second. He said, pockets. Principal said, ooh, hello, relief there. Let's ask another question. What does a dog do that a man steps into? Rich says, pants. Oh, that's another good one. Principal's leaning a little forward now. He's getting a little concerned about what's going on here. The teacher then asks, what goes in hard and pink and comes out soft and sticky? And Rich said, bubblegum. The principal's almost fallen off his chair at this point. He said, I think he's done pretty well. I said, no, let me ask you one more question. He said, all right, what begins with F, ends with K, and indicates a great deal of heat and excitement? Rich said, a fire truck. Principal said, put the little bastard in 7th grade. I got the last one. When Rich was about 6, it was when he discovered his main love in life, which we all know, of course, is food. And Rich was sitting on a bench in Hawthorne, and he ate 6 consecutive candy bars, one after another. And an older gentleman was next to him and said, son, let me tell you something. You can't eat 6 candy bars in a row. If you do, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to get fat, you know, your health is going to be bad. And Rich said, really? My grandfather lived to 107. The guy said, oh my God, did he eat 6 candy bars in a row? He said, no, he minded his own fucking business. Oh wait, Richard, I just want to say, I wouldn't have used that word, but Michael started. And if Shirley had been here, you would have heard that word a lot. And when Rich was a little older, he was about 8 or so, he took a young friend into the pharmacy. And he brought it up to the pharmacist a box of tampons. So the pharmacist kind of snickered and he said, do you know what these are? He said, no. No, but they're not really for me, they're for him. What do you mean they're for him? So he's 4, and we saw on a commercial on TV that if you wear these, you can swim, ride a bike, and play tennis, and he can't do it. And, you know, after Rich went to school here in Hawthorne, his parents had had enough, and they sent him to Connecticut. You know, some people say for better education. We know the real reason was to get him the hell out of here. And when he was there, Rich was on a weekend, and he went by a sign that said, talking dog for sale. So Rich said, he had to stop him. And he said, you really have a talking dog? Said, yes, I do. He said, he's out back. So Rich goes out back, and there's a Labrador standing there, and he says, so can you really talk? The dog says, I sure can. Rich says, holy crow. He said, yeah, I've had quite a life. He said, you know, I found out I could talk when I was little, and all of a sudden the CIA wanted me because they could send me all over the world and I could be in the room and no one knew I was a spy. So I broke some of the biggest spy rings in the world, and then I got a little tired of flying all over the world. So then I came back and I worked for the TSA in airports, and I'd hang around the luggage area. I'd listen to people when they checked in, and I'd know who was trouble. I got a whole bunch of medals, you know, I was honored all the time, but I finally got tired. So I got married, had a few puppies, and, you know, came home. And Rich is astounded by this dog. He can't believe it. So he goes into the guy and says, listen, I'd like to buy that dog. How much you want? He said, $10. He said, you want $10 for that dog? Why? He said, because he's totally full of shit. He never left the yard. After prep school, Rich returned to New Jersey, and he ended up going to Uppsala College. And Rich was such a significant donor after he graduated, the school closed. But while at Uppsala College, and this is an absolutely true story, he met Sharon. And this comes directly from Sharon. Rich walked up to Sharon and her girlfriend, stuck out his hand, and he said, hi, Sharon, I'm Rich Goldberg, and I'm running for freshman class president. And Sharon's friend quickly said, what a douche. True story. And that, by the way, that was the beginning of Rich's political career and his reputation. Now, Rich and Sharon have been married since 1978. And Sharon's very romantic. Rich is not quite as romantic. So Sharon one day sent Rich a text and said, if you're sleeping, send me your dreams. If you're laughing, send me your smile. If you're eating, send me a bite. If you're drinking, send me a sip. If you're crying, send me your tears. I love you. Rich replied, "I'm taking a dump, please advise." And Rich and Sharon were home one night watching TV, and Rich had the remote, as all men do, right? Rich had the remote, and he's going back and forth between the golf channel and the porn channel. Back and forth, back. Sharon says, "For God's sake, would you leave it, please, on the golf channel? On the porn channel, rather. You already know how to play golf." Screwed that up. Rich ran for council the first time in 1997. He lost. He demanded a recount. He won. Thus his new nickname, Landslide. He won by 1 vote. And that began his career. Although Rich is one of the first mayors in the town where we work that's actually leaving office voluntarily. Mayor Sharp James left in the back of a police car, as opposed to here. But Rich, being a very well-known, well-seasoned politician, got asked by the Republican Party in Passaic County to run for the Assembly. And frankly, Rich didn't want to do it, but Rich, he'll do what's right for the people, because he cares about the people. So Rich visited the only Native American reservation in Passaic County. It's up in Ringwood. You may not know where it is. And so the chief was there, and he said to Rich, "We have 2 major problems, and if you can help with these 2 problems, we'll all vote for you." We said, "Okay, what's the first problem?" He said, "We have a hospital, but we have no doctor." Rich said, "Hold on, let me handle the first problem first." Rich takes out his cell phone, he calls, hangs up the phone, he says, "A doctor will be here tomorrow." "What's the second problem?" He said, "We have no cell phone service." And speaking of politics, Rich was stuck in Washington in a traffic jam just outside the city. Nothing was moving. And suddenly a man knocked on the window of Rich's car. And Rich rolled down his window and he said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, terrorists have kidnapped the entire U.S. Congress, and they're demanding $10 million ransom. Otherwise, they're going to douse them all in gasoline and set them all on fire. So we're taking up a collection." Rich said, "I can give you 2 gallons. Rich was in a Starbucks the other day, and Tevye sung about his prowess with passing gas before, and Rich really had to relieve some pressure, let's put it that way. But then Rich realized the music was pretty loud, so maybe nobody would hear him. So Rich waited for the music to get a little louder, he let one rip, he said, okay, got a little louder, another one, so after like 2 songs he finally felt okay. Then he noticed everyone was looking at him because he had his earbuds in. And speaking of politics, Rich walked into a sports bar about 10 minutes to 10 one night, and seated at the bar was AOC. So Rich sat down next to her. The lead story of the news comes on at 10 o'clock news, and there's a man on the ledge of a building. And Rich says, "I'll tell you what, I'll bet you $50 the guy jumps." AOC said, "I'll take that bet." So a minute later, the guy jumps off the building. So AOC says, "Okay, I owe you $50. He said, "Well, to be fair, I saw this on the 5 o'clock news, and I knew the guy was going to jump." She said, "Yeah, so did I. I just didn't think he'd do it again." Many of you don't know that Rich is also adept in American Sign Language, and not just the one finger, the whole alphabet. And so Rich got called in by a godfather to help him with his accountant, because his accountant was a deaf mute. And the reason he was his accountant, because he didn't want him to tell anybody anything, but there was money missing. So the godfather said to Rich, "You tell that guy, I'm missing $10 million, and I know he knows where it is." So Rich did the sign language, and the guy came back and said, "I have no idea where it is." The godfather pulled out a gun, he held it to his head. He said, "Tell him now, Rich, that if he doesn't tell me where that money is, I'm going to blow his brains out." So the guy signed back to Rich, "It's in a case behind my house, 10 meters off the front porch." Rich said, "He said you don't have the balls to shoot him in the head." Rich recently had some surgery, as we all know, And as a result of that, during that time, he was unable to drive. So he had to take the bus. And Rich got behind this woman getting on the bus, and she was wearing a very tight skirt. And she tried to step up on the bus and couldn't quite get there, so she reached back and unzipped her skirt just a little bit. And she tried again and reached back and unzipped it a little bit. And a third time she tried. Finally, Rich had enough, and he picked her up and he put her on the steps. And the woman said, "I cannot believe you touched me." He said, "Hey, lady, you just unzipped my fly 3 times. And Rich, also while he was home recuperating, got the knock on the door, which we all look forward to, the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? They knocked on the door. So Rich said, "What the hell, I got nothing to do. Come on in." So the guy comes in. Rich says, "Have a seat. Would you like a cup of coffee?" Sure, gives him a cup of coffee. He said, "What would you like to talk about?" He said, "Shit, I don't know. I never got this far." And Rich, as you all know, is a public servant. And he doesn't want to leave the role of helping the public. So Rich has now signed on as a volunteer for NASA. Because the atomic clock, which is located in Boulder, Colorado, is off by an incredibly small amount of time. And they can't measure that amount of time. So what they've decided to do is to time Rich when the buffet line's open, and then they know that he'll be there fast before anybody else. But it's my pleasure to be here tonight. I just want to say about Rich that I want to be serious for a second. He does exemplify the term public servant. There's a lot of people in politics. Rich was never in politics. Rich was in it for the people. And the only thing Rich ever said to me in the 20-plus years I've been here is it good for the people of Hawthorne? And that's what he cares about. And people throw around the word great a lot nowadays, and I think it's overused, but I don't think it's overused when you say that Rich has been both a great mayor and is a great person, and it's my pleasure to know him. Rich?
Richard, that was it. Again, in the Jewish faith, you got atonement. This was penance. And we are honored to have been able to be here tonight. I think all of us can say, me personally, I have loved working with you. I have loved the fact that you let me do my job. You let Steve do his job. You let all of us, Eric even, most of the time, do our jobs. You do love Hawthorne, and you're a wonderful friend and a mensch. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, it's payback for those of us who took liberties with Richard tonight. So, in fairness, as is a roast tradition, the roastee is allowed to have rebuttal time. So, ladies and gentlemen, the man of the hour, Richard S. Goldberg.
Thank you, Michael. This is really a great night, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and you honor me with your presence here tonight. This evening really takes my breath away, but actually just walking takes my breath away. To those who roasted me this evening, your time is coming, and even some of you who didn't roast me tonight, your time is coming as well. I am so happy that tonight's party is here at Zacaluso, home of the Mayor Eats First buffet. It's soon to become home of the former Mayor Eats First buffet. I want to talk about my friend Victor Taraglia. Victor's not a roaster tonight, but I have a great Victor story. I think everyone has a great Victor story. About a month after becoming mayor, Victor came into my office, sat down and said, "Mayor." I said, "Yes, Victor." He said, "The clothes you're wearing." And I kind of, "Yes, Victor." He said, "Burn them." And start dressing like a mayor. Well, I took Victor's advice, and now I have 300 ties I have no place to wear. My friend Joe Ross. I'm glad my friend Joe Ross agreed to be a roaster. This is going to sound familiar, Joe, like we wrote this together. Joe and I became friends at the Hawthorne Cubs. He was the president, I was the vice president. I think we served together for 10 years. It's not very familiar. When I was asked to run for council, I called Joe to ask his advice. He was very encouraging and told me to run. After all, his brother was the former mayor of Boston. What he didn't tell me is that they called him first and he said no. With friends like him, well, you know the rest of the story. Joe is one of my oldest friends. How old is he, you ask?
How old is he?
Thank you. He is so old that I carry his eulogy in my pocket. Only in case of emergency. I consider Joe like a brother, only he's handy with tools. Being Jewish, I need an Italian handyman, and he's always willing to help. When I needed a chairman for Hawthorne Day, he stepped up, and you know what a success that's been. We speak every morning on the phone, and then between his grandchildren's games, we try to share a meal with our wives. Joe, thank you for being a great friend. Thank you. I see my friend John Bertolo is in the audience tonight. John and I served together on the council, and he was the council president when I became mayor. Almost daily, John would send me donuts, cake, cookies, or some other sweet treat. You might think that John was being a good friend, keeping me supplied with pastries. No, he was trying to put me in a diabetic coma. He wanted to become the mayor, and he figured that was the easiest way to do it. My friend Doug. Doug has always been a friend and supporter. And it was years before I found out that his name was appearing as Struck. It was actually pronounced Strike. Doug, my name looks like it should be pronounced Goldberg, but it's really pronounced Lipschitz. Doug doesn't just consider me a friend, but as a future patient. I don't have the heart to tell Doug that I have no plans to be the only Jew at Christian Healthcare. My friend Shirley Shoreway was supposed to be here, and so we'll just read what I was going to say about Shirley anyway. The Goldbergs and the Shoreways went to Jefferson School together. There were more Shoreways than Goldbergs, but given their academic prowess, we met many times as we passed them on our way to the next grade. I was in Debbie's class, although at that point she wasn't a go-go dancer. She was New Jersey's first go-go dancer, for those who don't know that. Shirley was a year or two ahead of me, and Richie a year or two behind me. I often said that if the Shoreway family knew that I would grow up to be the mayor of Hawthorne, they would have treated me a whole lot better. I originally ran with Marge, who showed me the ropes, and I was able to return the favor when Shirley was elected to the council. She told my wife Sharon that she was my political wife, going to functions with me so I didn't have to go alone. Great, 2 wives, no sex. Shirley's been a great friend and I love her. I hope she feels better. My friend Rich McAuliffe. Rich was my police chief for many years. I thought it might be nice to recall his rise to chief under my tenure. Rich was a lieutenant when I became mayor, one of 5 lieutenants. I had an opening for captain, so I scheduled interviews with all 5 candidates. One by one, the candidates came into my office and told me they weren't interested in the promotion. I can only assume this spoke volumes about the chief and his men. Rich came into my office and told me that operations side was an area that had no real experience, but if I wanted to promote him, he would try to do the job. After exploring all of my options, I gave Rich the promotion. But Rich did a good job as operations and settled into the job. And I was reminded by the t-shirt that Joe Walocco always wore that the chief was soon to age out of his job. I don't know if you remember that Joe walked around with his 317 shirt, which was the chief's 65th birthday. He wore it to council meetings. He wore it around the police station. So I understand that I would then need to promote a new chief. The department had 2 captains, so I scheduled the 2 interviews. Captain Carbone came into my office to say that he wasn't interested in being chief. He lived down the shore. It was, as Yogi Berra once said, it's deja vu all over again. So there was Rich as my only candidate. I thought about it. But I promoted Rich to chief, and he turned out to be an excellent driver as well. And even today, I get an occasional lift from Rich. Rich, I want to thank you for your service and your loyalty. I don't think I could have made a better choice for chief. Thank you, Rich. My son, Jonathan. At least I think he's my son.
We know.
Someone once said that maternity is a matter of fact and paternity a matter of opinion. I was a little apprehensive when I heard John was going to be a roaster because he has a master's in fine arts and playwriting. Between what he knows about me and his ability to write, I was a little concerned. Although I warned him that I had embarrassing stories from his youth that I might remember depending on what he said. I was hoping it was like the 1960s Cold War and we had mutually assured destruction. I think you should send a couple of missiles my way. I'd like to share John's telling about his career path. He had always talked about being a marine biologist. So imagine my surprise as a senior in high school. He told me he wanted to be a playwright and a poet. I said, John, buy a copy of the Sunday New York Times. Take out the employment section. Go to the P's. And find out how many people are hiring playwrights and poets. He told me that he had to follow his dreams, and I agreed that he did have to do that. Some years later, I bought comedian Louis Black's book. He, like John, had an MFA in playwriting. He described his degree as a degree in professional begging. He said all you can do is ask family and friends for money to put on a play. I have backed many of John's productions proudly, and he's a real talent, although now I'm not so sure. By the way, he added another P to his portfolio, also podcasting. While it might have been nice to meet Shamu or Flipper, I'm glad you chose this path. Thank you, John. My friend Steve Boswell. What can I say about Steve that Steve hasn't said about himself? Steve has proven to be the proverbial cockroach, surviving 4 mayors and is getting ready for his 5th. Steve may not have invented the phrase, the king is dead, long live the king, but he certainly perfected it. A few years ago, Steve sold his company to an Italian firm that hasn't been allowed in the country since March of 2020 because of COVID. I can just imagine those Zoom meetings. We need more money, not a lot going on here. Steve, when are you going to tell your brother Kevin that he's not getting the business? He still thinks he's an owner. Steve's biggest problem is that he doesn't know how to spend his money. You know, Steve is a big patriot, and he loves Mike Lindell. You know, the My Pillow guy? Steve decided to invest in My Pillow. Not in the company, in the pillows. Somewhere in South Hackensack is a warehouse piled high with My Pillows. Steve thinks it's going to be the next Bitcoin. Just last week, he took 2 My Pillows to the grocery store to try and barter for food. How'd that work out, Steve? You know, Steve is an avid golfer, but he doesn't record his rounds by the number of shots he takes, but how fast he can play the round. If speed golf ever became an Olympic sport, my money would be on Steve. Occasionally, Steve invites Dominic Miliamina to his country club, just to show the members how progressive he is. He tells people that we're his accountant and his chef. Really, Steve, a Jewish chef? In reality, Steve has been a great friend to me and to the borough of Hawthorne. And Steve, thank you for all you've done for me. Thank you. I'd like to think that I saved the best for last.
Me too.
Tonight's roast master is a friend and now my former personal attorney. So much for lawyer-client privilege. But before I talk about Michael, let me get rid of the lawyer jokes. What's the difference between a lawyer and a catfish? One's a scum-sucking bottom feeder and the other's a fish. What do you call 300 lawyers at the bottom of the lake? A good start. How can you tell when a lawyer is in line? His lips are moving. And one last one. What happens when a lawyer takes Viagra? He gets taller. Michael, you did a great job as a roast master, and I always wanted to be roasted by Fred Flintstone. Don't laugh, Joe, that makes you Barney Rubble. Michael became our borough attorney under Fred Crisatelli, and Fred lost re-election. Michael was Pat Botbile's borough attorney, and he was forced to leave town early and quickly. Imagine how nervous I was when I continued him as my borough attorney. When I became the acting mayor, Mike advised me not to do anything too mayoral. Too mayoral? What the hell does that mean? Because of Michael, I never wore the powdered wig or robes. For 13 years, I waited for those kinds of nuggets of advice. What I've come to expect from Mike is horse racing tips. Mike loves the horses, and when he was young, he wanted to be a jockey. That dream died when he found out that Clydesdales don't race. Mike loves the horses and gambling. Practicing law pays the bills, but he'd rather stand at the rails and watch the horses run. He told me once he would never let the law get in the way of doing what's right. I have no idea what that means. I keep asking him. I don't think he knows. There is nothing more exciting, though, than watching Mike and Steve Boswell talking politics. It's like watching an episode of the McLaughlin Report. And Michael, you're Eleanor Cliff. Now that's a reference only a few of you political junkies will understand, but when you get home tonight, Google the McLaughlin Report. I could go on, but I think I'm holding up dessert, and God knows I love a good dessert. I want to thank you all. Michael, you've been a great friend. I appreciate your service. I appreciate all of you for what you did here for me tonight. You're all off of my Christmas card list. It's too bad, John, you had 5 nights of Hanukkah before this. You're losing the last 3, apparently. But again, I just want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's a great honor to see so many great people here. I know some of you came to make sure I was leaving. Well, it's like going to a wake of the guy you don't like. You kind of go to the wake to make sure he's in the casket. But I did want to take the opportunity to leave town in the front seat of a police car. Unlike so many mayors who leave town in the back seat of a police car. But I want to thank you all. A lot of you have served on boards for me and with me and have been involved in town government. I appreciate all you've done, and I wish you all Godspeed and good luck. Thank you very much.
Don't move. We have a special presentation. It's Sharon's birthday. So we have 2 cakes tonight.
All right, Rich, right there.
We have a birthday cake for Sharon and a sugar-free thank you mayor cake for the mayor. So, once we get this lit, you're all going to join me, I hope. Are we ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sharon. Happy birthday to you. All right, you can all be seated. The second part of our program is the roast of Sharon Goldberg. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for your support tonight, for coming tonight, for bearing with us tonight. We hope it was entertaining. Love what we do, love what we do working with you. So, thank you. Dessert will be served momentarily. However, it is customary to wait for the man of the moment to get to the dessert line first. So, if you'll please allow Richard to proceed to his normal spot. I told you about that slow lumbering thing, right? Anyway, Richard has reached his point at the dessert line. Dessert coffee, thank you. Arrive home safely and have a great evening.